Thank you for watching this Last Mile Profits video. What links PostNL and FedEx? If you're interested to find out more, keep watching this video.
Last Mile Profits is brought to you by Parcel Pending by Quadient.
Gary, PostNL has taken an historic decision to open up its network to no other than FedEx. What's your take on that?
Historic is a very strong word. We work in a very slightly tawdry industry, even though we find it fascinating. I think the momentous thing for me out of that is the fact it's FedEx. Getting them engaged with lockers is quite difficult. They could give me a call when they're ready. Hi, Wilhelmina. I'm slightly sceptical. I have to say I'm slightly sceptical on how this will actually work out long term.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it, because I picked that up, or our editor picked that up, because it's interesting news. But the reality is a lot of networks that previously were closed are now opening up. In fact, we're finalising our out-of-home report. And one of the things that became really evident with the formula we had for unique points was points that were managed by one network. And what we saw is that data has changed dramatically over the last year, because more and more people are actually opening up their networks. So I think it's becoming a big deal. And the question is, what are the implications? Is it here to stay? And as you said, will the players benefit? And if I may, I'll kick off with a couple of comments.
Oh, I thought you were going to let me speak for a minute there, Marek. I thought you were going to actually let me speak for a moment. You caught me out.
I caught you out. But look, if you really want to, I think you can have a word or two.
Thank you.
But I might forget what I wanted to say.
Yeah. So my view on this is it's a great idea if everybody plays nicely. Clear, even, balanced, agnostic. So whoever the network originator is, the lead player, if they genuinely approach it as open, then it sounds marvellous. But I get a strong feeling this will all be very, very lovely until the first Black Friday comes and all the lockers are full. And you've got the originator and the investor in this network who's going to have to leave it open to potentially fill up by their competitor. Now, how will they behave then?
And that's, Gary, exactly it. That is one of the key things. For it to work, it has to be genuinely agnostic and fair to everyone. So there would have to be game rules, in my opinion, and I think you touched on that, which say that even if I own and manage the network, everybody is treated in the same way. The same way may not mean you get the same terms if you're injecting 1 million parcels versus 100,000. But for your, shall we say, the value that you add to the network, you're treated fairly vis-a-vis others who do the same. So that's one of the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're in agreement, no?
We were looking at the Czech market, which is quite crowded with lockers. It's probably junior locker land after Poland to a certain extent. And we were talking to one carrier, and they had a real problem that everything worked really well and run up to peak. At peak, they were sharing a network with the owner. They basically just got a note saying, oh, by the way, from here until January, please make other arrangements. We need every locker. It's been lovely working with you. Happy New Year. It just didn't work out very well. You touched on another thing. There are terms as well. You know, if you're we get asked a lot about is regulation going to come? Are certain cities or markets going to say you can only have one locker in this location? Everybody has to share. Or forcing an incumbent to open their network up. Well, they could open it up and say, yeah, you can use our network, but it's €10 a parcel. So there's the fairness of it is really hard to balance.
And I think this is the absolute key thing. And you're right. And it's not just the network, which I can imagine which one it is in Czech, but it's the same with Amazon. You know, Amazon talks more and more about opening up their network, but we all know that, you know, at the end of the day, if there is a potential issue with capacity, most of these players will favour their own parcels. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. That there is something else, and you know, Gary, that I'm a strong believer in the fact that open is great, open and efficient is even more great. And what I mean by that is that you don't have 6 or 7 carriers each dropping off 2 or 3 parcels, but that they drop off to an injection point and then it's one courier delivering maybe several tens of parcels. And that's the really difficult one, because I've seen most of the networks I've seen, if I'm going to say it in the right word order, actually don't work that way. It's you know, cell rental where individual couriers from different companies go to the locker.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see that kind of, you know, shared last mile or shared last 400 meters, whatever it turns out to be to make that work. That would be the kind of the sort of halcyon view. There are I've seen like tiny localized schemes for that in London and Bristol, where just certain very congested areas where they've just said no, you can only come in once a day. Everybody play nicely, pick one van and go for it. But seeing that as a more general approach would be definitely of interest. The other way I think this kind of works as well is everyone talks about density, and where networks are really dense, capacity doesn't tend to be the issue. You tend to be able to fill your locker up quite quickly if they're popular. I think where this has got legs is more deep cooperation in rural, for example. A little village probably wants locker service. There are people there that do long commutes or out during the day or just want the general convenience of picking up and drop off a locker. A lot of places have lost their shop. I know you love Pudo. Lots of places have lost their village shop, have lost their chance of having Pudo. But you're never going to get the capacity to make a rural locker cost effective unless everybody plays and shares.
And Gary, don't you think that this is where actually local and central government have a role? Because in a perfect world, everyone would think rationally and not look at their own specific and particular interest. But actually, I think if local and perhaps also more importantly, even central government would create scenarios which, a carrot and stick scenario that you motivate people to work together in this way, perhaps, it wouldn't be that the whole country is covered by one courier, but for different regions, if you have that sort of partnerships, you have a different courier covering a given region or some other model. I think that could work, but without, in my view, some kind of carrot and stick from government, I can't see it happening. Can you?
Not really. I mean, I've seen pockets of this, the Highlands and Islands, the islands off the coast of Scotland. It's just not cost effective for each carrier to send a guy out. So one guy tends to deliver all the parcels for everybody, but he's doing that in a sort of one guy serving many approach rather than any kind of formal collaboration. But I think if we're really serious about the environmental objectives from this industry and really serious about customer service, then eventually somebody has to bump heads together. I think you're right.
So how about a prediction? 5 years' time, are we going to have a sort of a growth of this trend? Because we can clearly see there are far more networks that at least in name say they're open and they do have some kind of, should we say, new approach to allowing potential competitors or current competitors to use the network. Is that going to develop? First question, what do you reckon?
Well, part of me wants it to, but part of me wants it to fail dismally because we operate agnostic locker networks and we want everyone to come to us. So, Lockers Italiana, the DHL Post Italiana thing, in theory, it should be really, really great. I don't see the other carriers signing up to it yet. There's still this kind of, is it going to work for us? Do I really want to work closely with them? What will happen at peak? What will happen to pricing question? You've got unlikely bedfellows of GLS and DPD getting together in Germany. So again, if you've got a behemoth like Deutsche Post to fight, then maybe collaboration is the way to do that. So maybe they've come together to do the same thing, but for different reasons. But I think sometimes you're right. We will need. I'm not just saying it because I'm associated with Quadient. I'm saying it because I believe it. It needs a neutral third party to operate the network and make the rules and enforce fair play and make sure that everybody gets served as equally as it's possible to do.
So we agree there that whatever happens, the player that runs it ideally should be seen as neutral, makes it easier. But even if not, then the rules need to be very, very clear and fair and non-negotiables. There can't be that, you join.
And I feel very remiss that we've got this far into the recording without even saying the word customer. And what does a customer want? What a customer wants is, I want to go to one place, I want to drop everything off, and I want to pick everything up. We genuinely hear that over and over again. And the only way to really do that is stop the proliferation of multiple networks and drive the efficiency from a customer experience point of view.
So here we have it. An amazing thing. Hasn't happened for a while. Gary and I are pretty much in agreement, first of all.
When you do let me speak, because sometimes it's interesting.
I was actually going to do a plug for Quadient, and there is an important role for open networks like Quadient, but I think that the train has moved forward and it's going to continue. Let's see how it finally ends up, what the end game will be. But we'd love to hear your views. If the viewers think, completely differently or actually support what we're saying, or have any other insights, please feel free to add comments, queries, etc. below. Also, please, if you've enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, because it helps us keep these videos free for you. Gary, as usual, great talking. Looking forward to the next one.
Me too.